Your dream is killing you. You pour your heart and soul into music, chasing that breakthrough, that recognition. But what if I told you that every late night, every skipped meal, every ounce of stress is actually pushing you further away from your goals? Because here's the twist. The music industry doesn't just demand your talent. It demands your entire self until there's nothing left. And that's where most people get it wrong. They think that more hustle equals more success, but in reality, it often equals a one-way ticket to burnout. But it doesn't have to be this way. Imagine a career where you're not just surviving, but thriving, where your creativity is fueled by energy, not exhaustion. It's possible to achieve your dreams without sacrificing your well-being. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. Because the truth is, your greatest masterpiece isn't just your music, it's your health.
I had never really thought I would get into the health and wellness space, to be totally honest. I was somebody who, at the time, had this successful talent management company, and we had this beautiful office in downtown LA in the Arts District, and we were, traveling all over and doing all of the sort of quote unquote glamorous things, and sort of living the life that I had dedicated so many hours of work and passion and everything to get to. And for me personally, I realized that I was essentially sacrificing my personal health and well-being for my work. And so, although I was successful in making money and traveling and all this sort of stuff, I personally was well over 300 pounds. I was chronically stressed. I was staying up super late. I was eating, terrible food, all the kind of stuff. And I remember just hitting this point where I was like, oh, maybe it's just not worth it. Like, maybe it's actually not worth my entire life and how I feel every day. And so I spent about 2.5 years after honestly struggling with my health and weight kind of on and off my whole life. But it was about a 2.5 year period where I really just focused on, what would it look like to prioritize myself a little bit more? And I ended up losing 130 pounds. And beyond weight loss, it changed my whole view of myself, my sense of where work fits in within my life, and kind of the priorities within it. And through that process, I was like, oh, I want to start helping other people do the same thing. It doesn't mean it has to be tied to weight loss, but like whatever it looks like to prioritize yourself within the craziness of the music industry, like what does that look like? That's such a fascinating question to me. And that's kind of how it started. I think what's fascinating about the music industry is that, similar to what you just said, it's because there's no kind of traditional pathway to get there. Most people have fought so hard to hopefully sort of be able to do it that I think once it arrives, or if you get to a place where you're like, wow, I'm actually doing this, there's this constant fear that it's going to go away all the time. There's like a fear that I have to say yes to every show or every endorsement or every PR request or interview or whatever, because it's like artists can find themselves gripping really tight to stay there. And I think when that happens, you lose your sense of self in the process. And it's just yes to everything until you hit a point where you realize it's maybe not worth it, or maybe there's a different way to do it that keeps you in the industry and successful, but in a way that's a little more sustainable and also probably more enjoyable too. I think the biggest consequence becomes your entire mental health, which is a pretty gigantic one if you think about it. I think it's one thing to go, all right, I'm a DJ and I'm doing this late night set and I just know I'm not going to sleep that well because I'm not going to be back home until 2 a.m. or whatever. You sort of know on a day-to-day basis, okay, tonight I'm going to be up late, whatever. That's one thing. But the part that's unquantifiable is the mental health piece. And that's the part that you can't really plan for in the same way that you plan for, okay, I'm going to stay up late tonight. It just will kind of be there in the back of your mind, maybe thoughts or feelings, or maybe resentment or stresses or all this, comparison, There's body image stuff that comes up. I mean, all of that is real. And because it's hard to quantify mental health, people don't necessarily expect it to show up as it does. And then all of a sudden you're in a big depression, or you have tons of anxiety, or your social media account that you've been growing for years is now something you're caged by and completely freaking out about. And when that kind of stuff happens, you can't really predict it. But then once it's there, because you didn't plan ahead, you're sort of, or the feeling is that you're trapped and you're like, I don't know what to do. The only thing I know to do is what I've been doing, and it's now backfiring. And that's kind of a stressful and scary place to be. A lot of artists, a lot of DJs, a lot of anyone in the music industry starts to tie their sense of self-esteem or self-worth to the success of their music career.
Of course.
And then it's like, all of a sudden, if you're this huge artist, you're again so excited, you're gripping on for it to stay. But the second there's a mishap, or maybe you get sick and have to cancel a show, there's a panic that feels like way beyond that show. And that's where you get into this like identity and self-esteem piece that's really, really hard to kind of detach yourself from. And it's interesting, like a lot of time when I have health coaching clients that I work with who are artists, DJs, musicians, producers, whatever label you want to put on anybody, one of the things we'll do is also, and it might sound really specific, but it might be like, oh, you have a session today at this studio. Let's look up healthy food options near the studio. And for my clients, I'm often literally based on their dietary goals or allergies or just whatever they're working on or we're working on together, I'm sending them like, oh, you have 5 days in the studio here. Here's different lunch options for the week that are in line with your health goals. And like that sort of thing sounds really small, but in the moment, a lot of times when people are in the studio, they're also not eating, or they get like super in it and they forget to eat, and then they're starving and they're like, screw it, let's just eat Taco Bell because it's next door.
Right.
But that little extra prep, and that's part of what my coaching is kind of based around, is just taking some of that pressure off of people.